Welcome to Sports Guy Talking. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am joined by guest Shawn Davisson, aka the Draft Guru, today to talk about Paolo Banchero. We are going to be talking about his draft profile as we will make player comparisons for Paolo Banchero. That will include his ceiling, his floor, and what his most realistic player comparison is. We are also going to give out our takes on Paolo Banchero's overall game. Before I say anything else, though, I want to present you guys with the topic question. So, here it is. What are your thoughts on Paolo Banchero? Which NBA player has similarities to Paolo Banchero?
All right, I'll kick it off. Paolo Banchero, my number 2 player on my draft board. I'm very, very, very high on Banchero. And let me tell you why. When I watch college players play, there's very few that stick out to me as ready to be professionals. Like some players in the college game, and they shouldn't be. I saw that in Jason Tatum. He was ready. I've seen that in a few other guys, but the most recent one, Banchero. Man just looks like a pro when he does everything. He knows he has professional moves, the spins, the hop steps. He has really elite vision I think he has elite passing vision. If you look at some of the games, him to Mark Williams, that was I think that might have been the best 1-2 punch in the country for big men. And he's a big reason why. He was throwing alley-oops, bounce passes. He's very smart passing wise. Knock down mid-range, can get to the basket. He doesn't have any insane crossovers or, insane dribble moves like that, but he knows how to get to a spot. Reminds me of Kawhi Leonard in that aspect. Kawhi Leonard won't wow you with any, any insane dribble moves, but he'll get to a spot. Banchero reminds me of that. And I saw very good flashes of a three-point shooting. I think it's something he still needs to work on, but I think he has a good form, and I think he just needs to perfect it. So, yeah, he's my number 2 guy on my board.
I'm not surprised that you like Paolo Banchero. I fully expected you to be pretty high on him.
Mm-hmm.
As for I'm kind of high on him, but I'm not really all that on him. I do like Paolo Banchero. One thing I was surprised you didn't mention, I think that he has underrated athleticism in this game. I think that he can get to the rim really well. He's got a good mid-range game to his game, but he's not a guy that I necessarily see superstar in him. Do I think that he can be a good player on a championship team? Yes, but do I think that he can be that guy that's going to be a top 5, top 10 player in the NBA? I'm not convinced in Paolo Banchero. I don't think that he can be that guy that can be a number 1 option on a championship contending team. Now, if you pair him up with a number 1 option on a contending team, okay, then we can talk about this guy being on a championship contending team. He's not a bad player at all. He's actually pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Number 3 on my draft board. And if a team like the Houston Rockets is available, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and answer this right now, I think that they should absolutely go ahead and take him. And look, this is one thing that I have when it comes to the draft. I have a pretty simple philosophy. Take the best player available when you're in a rebuilding situation. You can never have too many of one type of player at a position, because worst case scenario, you can always just trade them off to get something you need eventually in the future while you try to find the best available talent. So Paolo Banchero, he's a guy that can shot create, like you said. He's actually pretty underrated about that. And he has a good arsenal of tools. Now, look, he's not going to make any highlight reel crossovers. He's not going to get people to fall down, break their ankles. But he's going to be able to get himself open, make shots that are necessary. But I do have some serious concerns about this guy, because this guy only shot 33.8% from the three-point line at Duke. How's he going to translate that to the NBA level? I'm not fully convinced that he can space the floor and be effective for a team, because he's not big enough to be a center. I know that people are playing small ball more than ever, but he's 6'10", 250 pounds. He has the skill set of a power forward, but is he going to be a guy that's going to put up empty numbers on a bad team, or is he going to contribute to a championship contending team? So that's how I'm looking at Paolo Banchero. That's how I'm looking at him.
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely agree with you that I was a low 3-point percentage for him in college, but we've seen plenty and plenty of guys who have 3-pointer percentages around that range, who we just see be able to be 40% 3-point shooters in the NBA. Sometimes it takes an NBA shooting coach, sometimes it just takes time, stuff like that. I mean, a lot of these big men never play perimeter in high school. If you're 6'10", they just stick you in the paint. So you really start developing your shot in college, and you only spend 1 year in college and go to the NBA. I think these are vital years to really see how a lot of people can develop a 3-point shot. So for big men, that's kind of my philosophy a little bit. if you see flashes about a little over 30% is kind of what I look for. And if you see those flashes, I think that can be developed. So I see it being developed in him. I agree with you in your philosophy. If you're drafting high, take best player available. I'm looking at Rockets for him, and I'm looking at the Thunder for him. I think both would be awesome fits for him. I think Rockets, he kind of be more of a star on that team. While Thunder, I think he's a great piece for that team, and they can keep building on what they're doing. I love what the Thunder have been doing, piling draft picks, getting more, and I think if he goes to the Thunder, he's a guy who's contributing. If he ends up going to the Rockets, I feel like he's like a Carmelo Anthony Knicks type of guy, like just putting up a bunch of numbers, but not doing much with it. So I think it depends on what team he goes to, but I think he can be a fit for any team in the NBA.
I think that he'll be a quality player for sure. I think that he's going to last a long time in the NBA. He'll last at least a decade, 15 years, something like that, no matter what kind of role he's going to play. And I think he's going to be able to put up numbers. But I feel like when I look at Paolo Banchero, I think, how great does he want to be? And I'm not doubting his work ethic, but how much he wants to be great is going to determine how he's going to be in the NBA. Is he going to be an empty volume shooter that's just going to hog all the points and not necessarily play winning basketball? Or is he going to be a contributing piece that's going to help out a contender? Because that's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at this guy. There's nothing wrong being that with the number 3 overall pick. Look, not every NBA draft class is going to be stacked as far as I'm concerned. And this guy, he's certainly going to be a contributing player. So let me go ahead and ask you this, and you can go first with this. What's your ceiling, floor, and most realistic for this guy?
All right, man. I'll start with my floor. I'm going to go with Tobias Harris for him. Tobias Harris is kind of a do it all guy, can do kind of whatever you ask him to do, shoot, shot create a little bit, pass a little bit, score, play some defense. Tobias Harris can just do whatever you want. Any team would like to have Tobias Harris, but he's just a great glue guy. So I think at the very least, he's a glue guy on a really good team.
And for my floor, I'm going to go ahead, and this may make you fall off your chair, but I'm going to go with Carlos Boozer. I'm going to go with him as my player comp. He's a guy that made a couple All-Stars. He did some things in the NBA, but when you think about great players, Carlos Boozer is not one of them. That's what I'm saying for Paolo Banchero. So that's my floor. And where are you going to go ahead and pick next?
All right, we're going to go with my ceiling next. And I'm going to say pretty much a Blake Griffin. I think Blake Griffin, when you look at that Clippers team, he wasn't the guy. Chris Paul was kind of the guy there, but he contributed, do it all. He started adding shooting to his game, which he really didn't have in the past, which I see Paulo can do. Maybe even if it takes a few years, I think he's a guy who's going to develop a jump shot like Blake Griffin. Athletic, not as athletic as Blake Griffin, but gets to the rim, can create for themselves. Blake Griffin is a very underrated shot creator for himself. I think Blake Griffin can take over games, but I don't think he's that number one guy for, a championship team. But I think he very well could be, but Blake Griffin's my ceiling for him.
Blake Griffin, you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking the exact same thing. And like I'm telling you what, just like Blake Griffin, this guy's going to be really athletic. He can get to the rim. I know I keep repeating that a lot, but I just really like that about his game. He has the potential to dominate the paint, but it's going to be a lot of, he's going to need more alpha in him. Sometimes he just seems to want to be another guy, but there's going to be times in the NBA where he's going to have to say, give me the ball, get out of the way. And if he can do that, he's going to be a pretty good player. He's going to be a guy that's going to rack up all-star appearances if he puts in the work necessary to be a great guy. And look, it's just more than being the first guy to the gym. He's going to have to say, you know what, I want to be the number one scoring option, or I want to be the best player on a championship contending team. That's what he has to ask himself. If he can do that, I think he can be a Blake Griffin kind of guy where he can support a really good point guard if he gets a good point guard around him. That's what I absolutely see happening. Nothing wrong having that. So where are you going to go with most realistic?
Yeah. And I would just say for his work ethic, real quick, everything I see from him, he wants to win. He wants to be an elite guy. He wants to be a facilitator. He wants other guys to do it. But when he was asked to do stuff at Duke, I mean, he scored 10 points in 2 minutes. If you ask him to score, I think he could do it. Now it's a matter of saying, hey, go score, or he's just give me the ball and I'll go score. We'll see kind of how that goes. But I mean, everything I see, it seems like he wants to win. He's willing to put in the work. But like you, I don't know if in the NBA, he's going to be give me the ball and let me score. And so my most realistic comparison, I'm going to go with Julius Randle. I really like Julius Randle's game. I think, he had an all-star appearance. He's really good in New Orleans, good for the Knicks. I think that's a pretty realistic. I think he'll be a little bit better than Julius Randle, a decent bit better, but I just see their games fitting very closely to each other. Guy who can dominate around the paint, shoot a little bit, that sort of stuff.
And I'm going to agree with you, kind of. I'm going to go with Julius Randle as my most realistic player comparison. I would like that for him. He's an underrated facilitator for a big man, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be racking up a lot of empty numbers, and they're not going to really do much of anything in terms of winning. Yeah, he might get you to the first round on a bad team, but in terms of competing for a title, if he's the number one option on that kind of team, I don't see him being that kind of guy. They're going to have to get a better player than him eventually if they want to compete for titles. But as far as comparing him to Julius Randle, yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And one thing that we haven't necessarily touched based on is his defensive liability. I think that he has legitimate defensive liability in him. His foot speed's not great. His lateral quickness not there. His defensive awareness, it sometimes isn't where it needs to be. Are you concerned about that at all?
I think defensive liability is not who he is, but I think it's who he could turn into in the NBA. I think it could definitely get a little tougher if he, having to go out and guard on the perimeter. But as far as I see in the paint, you saw flashes, you saw some blocks, you saw some, I think he's actually a very smart defender. I think he's smart. Like if someone's driving at him, he knows when to swipe at the ball. He knows how to, he's like a slippery defensive player, but he's not a guy who's gonna, he's big. He's like 6'10", 250, but he doesn't play like that on the defensive end. He's not this brick wall in the defensive end. He's not, gonna contest guys in the post. So I think it depends on matchup for him. I think defensive liability could be a question for him, but I think it's his weakness, but I don't think that's something that liability should be a huge question, but it's a possibility.
And that's kind of where I'm going to drift off and disagree with you. I think that defensive liability, I think that's going to be a major role. Now, look, if he's going to a defensive-minded head coach that can help develop his defense, then I think he'll be fine. But if he's going to a guy that's not really focused on defense, more of an offensive kind of guy, then I think that he will have defensive liability in him. And sometimes it's about the mental part of his game. That's really what makes the difference of why some of these draft prospects never pan out. It's the mental game as well. And I'm not doubting his mental game. But if there's a reason why Paolo's not going to end up being a great player, it could be because his lack of basketball IQ on the defensive end of the floor in terms of getting his foot speed up and everything like that. And he's not also like a great rim protector either. He's going to need some help. But with the way how the NBA is going, it's kind of hard. And I know the Boston Celtics are doing it, but it's kind of hard to have two big men on the floor and succeed at the same time. I mean, it's possible, but it's going to be kind of hard to do that, especially if his three-point shooting never improves as well. Let's say if he continues being like a 33, 34% three-point shooter, that's not going to cut it in the NBA. I think that he's going to have to up it to about 38, 39% if he wants to be a good, efficient offensive player. Otherwise, he's just going to be a guy that's going to be jacking up a lot of shots. So that's where I'm at with Paolo.
Yeah, and I definitely could see that. I think he's a really smart offensive player, though. I don't think he's a guy who is going to take 20 shots and only make 4. I think he knows if his night or not. That's what I like about him. He can do other things if he's not shooting well. He can play, make, do that sort of stuff. I kind of missed where you had him on your big board. What do you have a specific ranking for him on your big board?
I got him somewhere around top 3, top 4. And if I have severe doubts about him before the draft, I'll just put him around top 5 or something like that. But I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's actually a quality player. But I'm just saying, don't expect him to be this great player because I've been hearing some buzz that this guy might be better than Chet Holmgren. And maybe you're buying into that hype. I'm not buying into that hype with Paolo. So that's where I'm at with him.
And for the defensive end, I think he had this at Duke. Here's what he had next to him at Duke. He had ACC Defensive Player of the Year, Mark Williams, 7'1", blocking shots, 7'7" wingspan, athletic freak. And he had that next to him on defensive end. It's going to be interesting to see what else he has next to him on the defensive end. They're going to maybe need more of an anchor, but they can't put an anchor next to him if he's not able to shoot. So shooting's going to be a big thing for him. I've seen switchability. He can switch a little bit. I don't think he can keep up with Steph Curry or anything, but switching on to a 3, switching on to a 2, I think that's possible for him, which is what they look for in the NBA. Like I said, he's my number 2 player. I expect him to be multiple All-Stars, top 10 player in, like, 8 to 12 range NBA player. That's what I expect from him. This is one of those guys that I'll talk to you about all day. Paulo, like I said, it just looks like a pro, everything he does. He's ready to play in the NBA. He's been ready to play in the NBA since he's out of high school. He knows how to get to a spot. He's making turnaround jump shots. I'm putting him over Chet. They squared off in college. Chet's my number 4 player. Paulo's my number 2. And my ceiling for Chet's higher, but ceiling doesn't determine a prospect. I think he's got a safer floor, and I think he's better, more realistic. I'm looking at Paulo and I see multiple-time All-Star guy.
And I think he's going to make a couple All-Stars definitely to his name. I think that he's certainly good enough for that. But let me ask you this, though, and I think we kind of already touched base on it. So we both said Jabari Smith 1, and we said Chet Holmgren 2 to the OKC Thunder. So I'm going to assume you're going to say Paolo is going to go 3 to the Houston Rockets. So based on that answer, how do you think it's going to fit with the Rockets? Do you think that the current lineup that the Rockets have is a good fit for him?
Yeah, I mean, you have some guys on that team. You have Jalen Green, who is a go-to guy. That's good for Paolo. Jalen Green had year 1. He's going into year 2. I think Jalen Green's potential All-Star year 2. I think he's ready for it. And that's a guy who you can depend on to score. So that's good for Paolo. He's not being rushed in to be the number 1 guy right away. Eventually, you ask him to be that, but him and Jalen Green together, really good. I'm a big fan of Christian Wood. I like him a lot. And you look at Kevin Porter Jr. Is he still on the Thunder? Or I think
he's still on the Rockets.
I think he's still on the Rockets. He has had issues with the whole organization. He's had issues throughout his whole career, got trouble in college, that sort of thing. But if he puts it all together, you look at that guy, and I think he's a really good, talented player, just needs to be not, bad in the locker room. I think this is a great fit for him, especially with Jalen Green already establishing himself in the NBA. Paulo's in no rush. I think it's a good fit. I don't think they're a team that makes a playoffs though in the next 2 years.
I would love to see him on the Rockets. I think if he goes to the Rockets, I think he's going to become a pretty good basketball player. I just hope that he doesn't go to a team like the Kings. That would be a bad fit for him, in my opinion. He's not going to succeed if he goes to a team like the Kings. I think he needs to go to the Rockets. I think he will go to the Rockets. So that's where I'm at with Paolo. All right, well, thanks for being on the show, man. Appreciate you coming on here, giving your analysis about Paolo Banchero. All right, make sure you follow his socials. All right, so he has an Instagram. It's at Shawn.Davisson. He also has a Twitter account. It's at Shawn Davisson 2. All right, guys, make sure you go ahead and follow his socials. I'll leave that in the description box below. Again, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Look forward to waiting for the draft, seeing where these guys go.
Yeah, man, definitely, for sure. All right, bro. See ya.
See ya.
Yep. Bye. That was Shawn Davisson that you guys just heard. All right, so he has Paolo Banchero as his number 2 ranked player on his draft board. I personally got him around top 3, so I got him number 3 ranked on my big board, personally speaking. We both have him going to the Houston Rockets, though, and we think that he could turn out to be a pretty solid player. He's a little bit higher on Paolo Banchero than I am. I think that Paolo Banchero, he's just going to be a decent to pretty good NBA player. While he thinks he has the potential to be a great player, I'm not quite as high on him as that, but we'll see what happens. So that is why my player comparisons for Paolo Banchero are Blake Griffin, Carlos Boozer, and Julius Randle. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking. Like the video and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in a future video. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Dustin Tran and at Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter at Dustin Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.